Well, hello everyone. I am Mark Holthe here, Canadian immigration lawyer, with my colleague Alicia Backman-Beharry, who has joined us to do another little live Q&A here on Thursday. But this one is a little bit different because we're going to start off with a featured question. And the featured question today is probably one, and I say this a lot, one of the more common questions we get is the fact that in the Express Entry portal and in the profile when you're completing it, it asks for work history for the entire 10-year period immediately preceding, the date that you submit your application. So that's the eligible period of time. But the question, Alicia, is do you actually need to claim all that work experience, chase down all those reference letters? And what if you can't remember the proper knock code? Can you pick and choose what you want to include? So that's the
Yeah,
question.
that's the question, and it's a question that comes up time and time again. It's also a question that comes up if you're looking at a married couple. And so, if you have a spousal aspect of your express entry application and you're trying to figure out, well, does my spouse also have to declare the last 10 years, every single place that they've been working? What happens then? So, we're going to tackle that question because it's one that a lot of people are asking, and it's one that applies to a lot of people who need to know how to do this properly. So,
Indeed. All right. Okay. So when it comes to kind of how we're working through this live session, we're definitely going to get to the questions. I want to let everybody know that we are broadcasting exclusively on YouTube now, which is kind of restricting some of our streams. So if some people are wondering where are they, why are they not broadcasting to LinkedIn or to Facebook or Twitter? Well, we're trying to stay consistent so that we can get a better reach with what we're doing. So we've kind of married ourselves to YouTube, and we're hoping that this going forward will help us to just get a better reach on YouTube, and then we can post this as a recording as we go forward. So yes. So I don't know, Alicia, if there's any other things that you want to tackle or address with this particular question as we jump into some announcements and then ultimately to the Q&As.
yeah, so I mean, I guess we can go through some of the announcements, some of the things that have been happening recently. One thing is, of course, these backlogs that everybody is talking about. So maybe we can touch on that, and then we'll get into answering the meat of the question on express entry here. So this is an announcement the minister has just made within the last couple days yesterday on Wednesday.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of pressure right now to justify what's going on with processing times and the fact that people are paying government application fees, and it's like your application goes into the void. You hear nothing for a long time. So this is apparently an attempt at transparency and accountability. And there are now, I guess, here we go. We have a highlights page where we have service standards that are written out here. I was taking a look at this morning, Mark. I find this very interesting.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe this has historically been accurate over the whole period of time
Yeah.
for certain periods of years, but definitely I know there are huge backlogs in the processing of passports for Canadian
Yeah.
citizens.
It's awful.
Um,
Yeah.
we applied for a passport for my son back in April, and we just got it in August. So
Yeah.
it is definitely not running at 10 business days or 20 business days, but
Well, you can
they're
see
saying,
this, Alicia. So this is
yeah,
their service standard, right? So that's what they're hoping to do is within 10 business days.
yep,
So their target is to meet that standard for 90% of the applications. This 81% only relates to 2021, not
that's right.
2022. And this is where it's a freaking disaster.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so they're publishing these, but some of these take a look at what the time period is in terms of where their statistics are coming from. So these are looking backwards in time. It does give you at least what their processing service standards targets are. So a lot of the times people are saying, well, can I send it in a web form? And they say, well, don't even talk to us if you're below our service
yeah.
standards. So at least now we know what the service standards are for each of these subgroups of applications. It starts off with all the Canadian applications, administrative service, and now we get into the temporary residence applications. So here's where they're giving the service standards for work permits, excluding the IEC, so not doing International Experience Canada. So this is other types of work permits. They're saying that they have an application service standard of 60 days, and for 2020 to 2021, they were processing about 74% of applications within that standard. And they introduced the service standard in September 2011 and renewed it in 2019. So there we go. We've got a difference in terms of work permit applications submitted inside Canada. So that's a longer processing time, 120 days. I know right now, of course, we're up to,
It's way more than that.
160 days is about what's the posted processing time on an in-Canada application. We've got IEC separated out as a separate processing standard of 56 days, and then we've got our economic applications. So these are ones where you don't have to have an LMIA. So hopefully you're going to be getting those more quickly in terms of the opinions. But those are just opinions. So that's not a binding thing. It's just a letter. Study permits, here we go. We've got our outside Canada study permits processing of 60 days. Extensions inside Canada for new or existing is 120 days. And then we've got our visa applications. So these ones, again, we know that those visa processing times have gone through the roof in 2022. So I don't know how helpful it is to look back to 2020 to 2021. But
Yeah. It's
yeah.
interesting, Alicia, when you look at all of these things, what I want to point out to everyone is that this is averaged across the whole world. So the places where maybe there's one or two applications a year, well, the reality is they're, of course, going to be 100% and skew the average. Whereas countries like India, it's just horrible. So absolutely horrible. So it's really tough to know for certain what is, what these really mean for visa offices where there's a lot of volume. And that's the hard part.
The other interesting thing, Mark, is if you go back to the main page, so the one that says building a stronger immigration system, rather than drilling down into the service standards link there. Yeah, if you keep scrolling down to the very bottom of that page, that's where all the graphics are, right? So this is where they're showing what a snapshot of the current backlog is. So look, yes, they have way more applications than they historically have had. So they're trying to capture that information in these little statistics up at the top. And if you look though, temporary residents, you've got 41% of total applications being processed, right? So they're not even at half of the temporary residence applications. And I'm assuming that this is for this year. I'm assuming that this is a current state of what's happening with the backlog. And then same thing for permanent residents. They're less than 50% of processing those. They're doing a little bit better on citizenship. If you keep scrolling down on the reducing the backlog, now we have some nifty little charts, and it's going to give a time horizon for the percentage of backlog under the federal high skilled, actual and projected. So we're sitting here in August, and I guess they haven't updated it to August, they've updated it to July, but they're hoping that they're at a huge backlog. They're at 100% of backlog right now, and they're hoping to bring that down to 20% backlog by December of this year. So that's a pretty ambitious target. Yeah. So they break this down, the federal high skilled, they break it down by provincial nominee, they break it down by spouses and partners. They can give you, some of the data, and you'll see that it fluctuates, right? It's sometimes they're going to get more applications as soon as they start opening up the programs again. So that'll, of course, change their processing statistics. And then if you go to the top of the graph there, you can change this, toggle it to the provincial nominee program. They're doing a little bit better on provincial nominee processing than they are on the federal high skilled processing for permanent residents. And then spouses and partners, it's here too. And again, they are continuing to process spouses and partners. And we have started to see that in terms of the online applications for sure being processed a little bit more smoothly, a little bit more timely in terms of people getting their acknowledgement of receipts, their medical instructions, their biometrics instructions, and ideally their final passport requests. So Here is something interesting you may want to check out if you're looking at backlogs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So take it with a grain of salt. And that's kind of how I approach it. And the reality is, with all of those backlogs, this is really damage control. So this is like the Liberal government trying to put a spin on in our immigration program. Excuse me, everybody. I'm still fighting this cold. They're doing their best to try to put a spin on what has been a horrible thing the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So there we go. We have at least an acknowledgement from the government that there are giant backlogs, and now there's a snapshot, and they're going to be updating those regularly. So you can take a look and see what's happening with the backlog in the program that you have applied under.
Exactly. All right. Okay. As far as excuse me, as far as a few other announcements that we wanted to make, as always, remember on our firm website, we are constantly releasing new blog posts. Now we've got a really easy search feature here, so you can search by the topic. A place to subscribe to our newsletter, which Igor, I think we're going to be getting that out on Friday. So make sure if you haven't done that, do that. And you can just search through all the various blog posts that we have. Within the Canadian Immigration Institute, we've got a couple courses that are coming up as well. Our spousal, you can register right now and get access to the material. The masterclass will be in October. And so that gives people a little bit of time to kind of prepare. And it does take time, Alicia, to get these applications done right. Spousal sponsorship is not this quick process that you would expect it to be. The postgrad extension course is live, so you can access it right now. Excuse me. And the masterclass, the next one for express entry, will start in September. So all those links should be in the description below, and so you can take a gander at that. I also want to point out on the YouTube channel here that if you want to get notified, make sure that you subscribe. So whenever we have our live sessions through here, you can click to get notified. And so that's what you want to do. And then when we do go live, you'll be notified about it. All right. And then there's constant content being released here. And just like on our website, you can search it all with the search button. And there is just a ton of videos. I think we're almost 600 now over the last few years that we've had the channel. So all of that is available for your perusal. So if you're looking for something that a specific topic, that's a good way to do it. All right. So Alicia, let's take a dive in and just see who's tuned in here. So we've got Henry here from Nigeria. Great to have you connected in here, Henry. We've got Alejandro. He says, hey, Mark, what's your email? Well, the best way to connect with me, my friend, is to go right back here and just click on Speak to a Lawyer. And then once you're here, you can click on any of the links to connect with any of the lawyers. Wow, I'm going to have to let Alicia take over here. And that will allow you to connect in and book a consult. And then we can talk about anything specific that you need. Mm-hmm. All right. All right, let's see who else we have here. We've got Unity, and we have James, who's over in Mumbai. Welcome, James. Marvin Dujit says, good day, Alicia and Mark. Hope you feel better today, Mark. Well, as you can see, I'm still struggling, you guys, but the show must go on. T. Lee says, glad you're better. Well, I guess you guys haven't seen me hacking and coughing yet by the time you posted these comments. But good to have you guys here. Let's see. We've got Shaniqua. Hey, is in Detroit. And y'all hiring. Well, we are growing. Absolutely. And this summer, we had a great summer. And I was just talking with Prem this morning, Alicia, and he says things are definitely picking up in the firm. And everybody's getting a whole lot busier. So as we expand, Shaniqua, we definitely will be looking to add new awesome people to our team. Okay. She says, y'all want to explain how it works for Americans. Okay, well, Shaniqua, we'll address that in just a little bit because that's a very, very big question. And when it comes to immigrating from the US to Canada, express entry is usually the route. But there are lots of pathways too through work permits. And it's an entire, we could spend a whole day's conference on how Americans can come to Canada to work, to study, to live permanently and ultimately become a citizen. So one of the things, Shaniqua, that we do is we usually ring the bell, and then we say, hey, the best way is for you to book a consult with one of us. And then we have the ability to go through in detail your unique situation, Shaniqua, because everybody's a little bit different, and the pathways that might be available for you might be different for someone else. All right, we've got Fabio. Good morning to you, Fabio. And let's see here. So Shaniqua says, I'm from Detroit. Can I work up there? Got an offer to work in BC. Well, Shaniqua, that's a good spot then to book a consult. We can sort through that directly with you. Okay, just seeing here. Oh, Alejandro says, do you issue certificate for those who took your course? Sure. He says, I need the invoice to claim my CPD hours. I took the Express Entry course. You bet, Alejandro. Just send an email to info@Holthe Law, and we'll make sure that we get that receipt. So Alejandro was one of the alumni who had gone in and had registered and joined us and taken the course. Alejandro had joined me, I think I can't remember if it was the last one we did, but it was this Express Entry course. And Alejandro is an immigration consultant, and we do our best to try to help everyone, professionals and individuals who are applying. Okay. All right. There's so many helpful people. EJ says, hello, Mark and Alicia. Drink lemon tea, Mark. Then you'll be fine. Watching from Saudi Arabia. All right, EJ. I definitely need to pursue some home remedies. That's for sure. All right. So you guys can go ahead and start piling in your questions, and you can start asking them now. And we'll start from the beginning here, and we'll work our way down. So the first question we have is from Mr. Bruins. He says, still no interim authorization. The call center agents told me twice there was a note that I am eligible. Call center agents instructed the office to proceed manually. Why? Any thoughts on this mess, Alicia?
So some people are getting these interim authorization emails. Some people apparently are not. And it is interesting, Mark, they did release, and I don't know when they did, but they did release a little bit more detail in the actual ministerial kind of public policy statement that they put out. And so it's very technical, but they have a release date, or a signing date at the end of July when the minister announced the program, even though the details didn't go until August, as we know. And so I guess it was signed earlier and not made public until more recently. But on that, it talks about different categories of applicants. And so depending on which category of applicant and when your postgrad work permit was expiring, the dates that the original postgrad work permit were expiring, then that's going to give you certain exemptions from some of the normal immigration refugee protection rules and regulations. So depending on what category you're under, they have this blanket authorization that says if you for sure, in fact, had a postgrad work permit that was valid and then expiring within the correct time frame, then you should be exempted from the normal requirement that you have to have that authorization in hand in order to be able to work in the meantime. But they have a whole bunch of extra caveats depending on whether you allowed your status to lapse, whether there may have been an intervening application that was refused. So it becomes really complex. It's difficult to say why in your case, but it is possible that there was one of those complicating factors, and that's why it's not coming up as an automatic interim authorization.
Okay, next question is from Jenny. Jenny says, hello, Mark and Alicia. I opened an Express Entry within Canada. I have 2 years of experience from back home, but I don't have a letter of employment pay slips from this company. Should I mention it?
Yeah, and so this is getting to, the poll question that we picked for this week, which is, do you need to claim all your work experience? And the answer is yes and no. So the answer is it depends on whether you're looking at your work history section on your Express Entry profile or your personal history. So on your personal history, you put everything, absolutely everything that you have been doing for the last 10 years with 0 gaps. And that includes all the work experience, even if you're not claiming it for points. However, on your work history, it's a different matter, because if you look at the wording on the express entry work history kind of instructions, it talks about the work history that you are going to rely on for points, so that you are claiming. And in this section, it becomes really important to distinguish between your minimum eligibility factors. So if you take a look, you have to have had at least that 1 year or 1 year equivalent of full-time continuous skilled work, depending on whether you're looking at FSW or the CEC. Making sure that you've met that minimum is key, otherwise everything falls down like a house of cards. So make sure you've met the minimum requirements. And then it depends on how many points you're claiming. And you're going to need to try to claim the points that you are going to be able to back up with evidence, because it's not enough just to stick that work history in there, because anybody who gets an ITA knows that as soon as you've put in that work history in your profile, that's going to translate to what you have to justify with your employment records. So letters from those employers, pay stubs, T4 statements, W-2s if you're in the US, other documentation, work contracts to prove that you actually did the job that you are claiming, and also to prove that it is the NOC, the National Occupation Classification Code, that you're claiming. So to answer your question, Jenny, it's really important that you are backing up the employment that you are claiming for points. And if you don't think that you can do that, then it is a real risk, because if you can't have the evidence to show that you did that job, likely the officer is going to refuse, saying that you don't get the points for whatever work experience you've claimed with no evidence to back it up.
All right, the next question. This one's a little bit out there, Alicia, but we'll hit it. This one's from John. So he says, "G'day, Mark and Alicia. My question is, what government agency in Alberta should I go if I want to divorce my spouse in the Philippines? Can you give a summary of the process? Thanks in advance."
So, John, this is more of a family law question than it is an immigration law question. So, in Alberta, of course, divorce is possible and legal if you're meeting the requirements under family law, but you have to show that you have standing, or that a court in Canada would be able to take jurisdiction, depending on, I'm assuming you live in Alberta, but basically you have to show that you have standing to bring the suit forward in Alberta, in the court in Alberta. And then there are legal service requirements in terms of how you commence proceedings against somebody who's not physically here, and notification requirements. So there's a whole bunch that needs to go into whether you're going to commence a family law divorce. And in fact, whether divorce is the right thing for you. There's lots of great family law lawyers you can reach out to talk about divorce. We're focused on immigration law, and
Yes.
sometimes family law things come up in the context of spousals, but generally you're going to need to speak to a family law lawyer in Alberta.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we do, is we direct people to go to a family law lawyer. And it happens, like John, it's possible. I've had many Filipino clients that have proceeded forward with the divorce in Alberta for obvious reasons. Okay, Fabio says, will we be able to mix and match different tier levels to form 1 year of CEC experience, such as 6 months tier 2 and 6 months tier 3?
And okay, so for everybody who's been following what's happening with the NOCs, we know that, of course, the system is changing to a 5-digit code system rather than the 4-digit code system. And so there's going to be additional levels. And Chanel, yeah, and Cedric were doing a whole
Tier.
video on what's happening with tier. These changes are coming up in the fall, so it'll all be implemented by November of 2022. And so this is probably the video that you'll want to go check out to see what's happening with tier. The other thing that you'll look at is when you go to the National Occupation Classification Code, and hopefully people know how to do this, but you can search by the 2016 version, which is the older version, and then the 2021 version, which is what we will be using as of November 2022. So when you search by the new version, you'll get the new, yeah, there you go. We'll get the new breakdown and matrix. So if you look at the NOC 2021 version, and maybe you can go to the matrix, Mark, and you can just show people what it looks like. But it gives you a visual of, yeah, you can get the comparison if you know what your old NOC code was and you want to get your new NOC code. And
I'm just looking here to see.
yeah.
These are so this, one of the things, this is the concordance table, Alicia, which is quite effective when people are trying to figure it out. I'm just looking for the matrix here. I'm not sure if I can find it. One short kind of answer I can say to Alicia is that, we know the levels that are going to be kind of considered to be at the skill level B, generally speaking. And yes, you can mix and match tiers above, just like you did with, with the skill level B, A and O in the current 2016. I'm just looking here to see if I can find the matrix.
I'll send the link to the matrix for you.
Sure.
I like the matrix just because it's a nice visual and people can expand upon those links. And so you can take a look and see what fits where. But there are other ways to search the NOC as well. So here's the matrix. And again, you can scroll down. And then if you look at the current one, it's probably on the 2016 version. So this is the 2016 version, and you can see that these are the 4-digit codes. When you expand them, you'll see they're 4 digits, but you can see that it only goes up to NOC A, B, or O. And then everything else is a NOC C or D, which is not eligible currently for high skilled work. But when you switch that version to the NOC 2021, well, now and then you might have to click continue. Now we've got the tier categories. And so now instead of NOC A, B, or O, now we've got 0 would be the management, 1 is going to be the next highest, and then we go all the way down to 6. So this is the new stratification of everything. And yeah, if you're looking at doing your CEC, then you're going to be making sure that it fits within the upper tiers under the new system. So there we go, 0, 1, 2, or 3 under the new system.
And realistically, they just found that there was too big of a gap and too much inconsistency between what was considered skilled within NOC B. And for that reason, some occupations that were in NOC B, they really felt that they shouldn't be. And others that were, that were C's and D's in the old version, they felt, well, really, it requires more training and skill to be in this occupation than some of the B's. And so they were trying to find a balance, and that's really why they decided to kind of shift and modify. And one of the things that I want to point everyone out to, once again, is back on our website, when you go to resources and then click on blog. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, let's see how well the search feature works today. It wasn't working as well for me yesterday, just because I think it's working good now. You can see that there was a blog post that was created by Cedric, and Chanel helped Cedric with this. That basically goes in detail, kind of the breakdown, and talks about some of the winners and the losers, I guess, if you will. So you guys want to definitely head over there and take a look at that. And like we said before, this right here, an update just 3 days ago, you want to go and watch that video for sure if you haven't yet. And that'll give you more information. And we're going to be releasing lots more about this as we get closer to November, when everything is supposed to roll over to it.
Yeah, so make sure that it's the high skilled under the new tier system, and that you're adding up to the minimum required 1,560 hours, that you're not counting more than 30 hours per week.
All right. Okay, next question here. This is from T. Lee. Will everyone who applies for the postgrad 18-month extension get 18 months, both 1 year and 2 year postgrad students?
And so the answer should be yes, as long as your passport is going to continue to be valid for the entire period, because there's no recapture of time.
Yep. That's a short and sweet answer. That is it. Okay, next question is from Pablo. And Pablo /Yoda says, my sister is a permanent resident in Canada, but I don't want to claim points for it. Should I answer no to the question on the PR application? What would it not be considered? Would it not be considered a misrepresentation?
Pavel, that's an interesting question. I'd be curious about why you don't
Why?
want to claim the points for your sibling.
Probably, I think he's not on good speaking terms with the sibling, and she won't provide him with the documentation he needs. That's what I see more than anything.
Maybe. The other thing that I sometimes see is, if people are living in Quebec and then they don't want to show that they're living in Quebec, or they intend to go to Quebec because their siblings in Quebec. So sometimes there's complicating factors like that as well. But you will want to be really careful that you still have to declare your sibling. It's going to ask for your immediate family members, and all those details have to be included as well. So you can say in your letter of explanation that you don't want to claim points for your Canadian sibling for whatever reason that you have, but you do have to make sure that your family members are fully declared as part of your express entry application. So just be careful on that.
All right, next question. This one comes from Shale. And Shale says, do you need pay stubs to prove paid work experience, or is an experience letter enough? What if someone no longer had access to the pay stubs bank statement to prove compensation?
Mhm. And this is something that comes up all the time. I know, Mark, this is something that you cover in the course as well. So what do you do when the company is shut down or the management has changed and you no longer have somebody who's willing to vouch for you because they weren't there when you were there? And so it's a matter of getting the best evidence that you can get. And that's going to depend on your circumstances a little bit. So yes, you're going to try to get a copy of the contract. Maybe you have emails back and forth with that company that was talking about job duties and start dates and end dates and how much you were getting paid. Maybe you have tax records, or you have bank account statements, or you have something, not the pay stub from the company, but something showing that you received that amount to your account, and it's showing that it's coming from an employer's name, or the HR company. So there's a number of different things that you can try. Sometimes you need to get creative to maybe find previous managers who might be able to write you a letter, but only in their personal capacity. None of that is as good, of course, as getting direct from the source pay stubs and immediate proof. But do what you can to try to show exactly the time periods that you are working.
Mm-hmm. And Va here says, it's kind of a follow-up. It's almost impossible getting work references from my employer. Please, what is the best means to prove my work experience? So I'm going to jump in here, Alicia, and I'm going to point people back to the course right here. In the course, when you register for it, it is full of sample documents, templates, tutorials, and within module 6, it's all full of all of these supporting documents to help you prove the things that you need to, because really the rubber hits the road with module 6 here and the documents within express entry. And in our record of employment section, we have, wow, the list probably has about 35 or more different suggestions on things that you can include to prove your work history. And we have a checklist that you can even give your employer with things that we like to see when we're proving work history. But then there's another document that specifically addresses the many, many things that could potentially be used to try to support the work history. So every situation is a little bit different. And I'd strongly encourage you guys, if you haven't, to go over here and subscribe, and you get access to all the material now. And then on the 19th to the 22nd, that's when you can bring forward all of those questions. And we go through systematically through each of the classes, each of the modules within the course, everything from learning the basics in module 1, starting with your profile. Module 3 is all about completing the profile. Module 4 is broken down into 3 different parts. Well, really 2 parts. The principal applicant, and if you're just single, that's all you need. But we've also added a section for the accompanying spouse and for the dependents. And then, of course, like I said, module 6 is just full of sample documents, checklists, just resources to help you make sure that what you're submitting is exactly what IRCC wants. So that's something, Va, that we 100% include in detail, and we talk about it in detail. But yeah, sometimes it's employers just don't cooperate. And then you have to figure out, is this work experience that I'm claiming, is it essential? And then it comes back to the discussion Alicia had in the beginning. Maybe it's not essential and you don't need it. But if it really is, then you got to work hard because the burden of proof is on you to prove it.
Yeah. And the other thing that I often see people do is if the principal applicant, so the principal applicant is the one who's doing their express entry application, if the spouse is accompanying them, unless the spouse has Canadian work experience, so qualifying Canadian work experience, the spouse doesn't have to put anything in that field that says what's the work history. And a lot of times people get tripped up. They've put in like 10 different entries for the spouse. None of it's Canadian work experience, so they're not getting any points for it. You know, the spouse doesn't have to run around and track down every single
Yeah.
employer for the last 10 years because that is a huge pain and a lot of time. But you're never going to get points for that. Don't put it in the spouse's work history, put it in the spouse's personal history.
Yeah. And so Pablo's added just a little bit more clarification on the question of declaring the sibling. And he says, actually, I have a provincial nomination, which means he has 600 points. Pablo, don't be lazy. Just put yes for your sibling and get the information and include it. Things will go so much easier because like Alicia said, you can't answer no because you have
Yeah.
a sibling, and then dancing around, just do it. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question here. This is from Aaron. He says, how should we explain an unpaid internship during study in Canada? Okay, only a couple of hours in a month while studying in Canada that was allowing to work up to 20 hours. So, how do you explain this? In Canada, I'm assuming was the internship.
Yeah. So, and Aaron, I guess you're probably talking about how to justify this in your personal history, right? Because of course you're going to have your studies that are overlapping probably with this internship. Depending on, I'm hoping and I'm assuming that you were able to be granted your co-op intern work permit as part of your study permit. So if it was mandatory that you had co-op or an internship that constituted less than 50% of your course and it was properly authorized by your school, it was part of your application for the study permit and it was a work permit application that accompanied your study permit, so it was what was initially authorized by the school or college, then it's fine to have been doing that internship, of course, but then it's a matter of how do you explain it and justify it in your express entry profile. And so most of the time you're going to people do this a few different ways, and of course I'd need to talk to you to look at how you've done it
Yeah.
in your application, but sometimes you can either, yeah, so book a consult, but sometimes you can do overlapping periods, or you can have a spreadsheet and you can do letters of explanation that go over exactly how you managed your time, how you were studying, when you were doing the unpaid work or internship, and then when you started working for your job that you're going to be claiming your Canadian experience points for. And be really careful to make sure that you were not working from the time that you were notified by your school that you completed your program up until the day that you submitted your postgrad work permit application. So you're not eligible to be working 20 hours during that period of time until you submit the PGWP.
Jenny says, thank you for the answer. Thank you for this helpful information. You're very welcome, Jenny. Anything that we can do to help, just let us know. All right, next question. This one's from Kieran, and I'll have to kind of read it a little bit slow. She says, hi, yesterday the timeline changed for entries. It's also applicable for spousal sponsorship also? Are the processing times getting faster with this process? So this is referring back to the information that we were sharing here. And there was actually another question, and that was from Pablo, which kind of goes with this. He says, why is TR to PR not in there? So, yeah. So as far as this and the service standards and what's being posted here.
Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't mean that anything has actually sped up. It just means that they are giving people a snapshot of what is going on right now. So two things. The service standards is backwards in time in terms of those service standards have been here for a while, but now they're making it public what they are for each of the subcategories. And hopefully they're going to be posting how they're doing. Next year they'll post how they did in 2022, which is not probably going to look very pretty. Um, it doesn't necessarily mean that the processing times are going up, but that's where you look at the backlog. So there's two things. They have the processing standards and the backlog. So if you scroll down on that main page, rather than than this page. If you go back to the one that has the little picture of the people walking along there, and then, yeah, building a stronger immigration system. Then if you go down, just keep scrolling down on that page. This is where the reducing backlog info graphics are. So we have the charts that show, well, there's a huge backlog in federal high skilled right now, right? It's higher than any of the other categories. It's certainly higher than the provincial nominees, and it's way higher than the spouses or partners. So we do know that they are trying to prioritize those spousal applications. And the reason they're trying to prioritize those spousal sponsorship applications is because it's literally written right into Section 3 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, where it says one of the overriding objectives of our immigration system is to try to reunite family members. And so there we go. Here's the objectives of the Immigration Act under Section 3 sub D, to see that families are reunited in Canada. So they have been trying to priority process the spousal sponsorships because they know that families are split. In a lot of cases, people are being separated because of these delays in the backlogs. So they are trying to process them. They are projecting that their backlogs will get down. So theoretically, that means that, yes, those processing times will go down specifically for spouses and hopefully for everybody else, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
All right. DS Martinez says, hi, Mark and Alicia. Does internship experience in Canada within the past 3 years, which amounts to 12 months total, qualify a person to go through the Canadian Experience class for express entry? Obviously, we probably don't have enough information to answer this, DS, but maybe Alicia, you can kind of expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so it really depends on whether the internship was paid or not paid, and it depends on whether you were a full-time student at the time that you were doing that internship. So there's a few different moving parts there. You cannot claim for Canadian work experience, you cannot claim anything that was unpaid. It doesn't qualify as Canadian work experience if it's not paid work. So assuming that you were paid for this internship, then the next moving part is that if it's in Canada Canadian work experience, it doesn't count if you are a full-time student at the time that you are doing that paid internship. So maybe you completed your studies and then you did the internship, in which case that might be okay.
All right. Let's see here. I saw one question from Simranjot. He says, hey, Mark, can we claim work experience in express entry, but it was not declared during the study permit application?
You better ring the bell, Mark. You better ring the bell. So, Simranjot, this is a problem, right? This is where you can start getting into the world of misrepresentation. Why didn't you claim it in your study permit applications? If you in fact did it, then why didn't you disclose it in the past? You're going to need to really, really carefully explain all this, because this is exactly what immigration is looking for, right? If somebody comes as a student and they never declare that they were working for years in a certain occupation, and then magically that appears on their express entry profile, they are going to have questions. They're going to think, well, maybe you're just inventing this work experience for your express entry. And so tread very carefully to make sure that you're explaining what happened and why. And it is possible that they will say that it's misrepresentation if it's something that you ought to have declared and now you're relying on for points.
All right. Next question is, this is from Alejandro. And I think, Alejandro, this is really like we offer consults to consultants as well who have difficult situations. So you can also do that. So I'll ring that bell. But it says, what a student who came to Canada with a co-op study program may do to extend his or her stay in Canada once his program of study is over and wants to obtain PR status. So this is pretty broad, Alejandro. And I recommend that you, book a consult. We're happy to walk through the process and talk about the options and strategize with you as well. So do that. And yeah, Alicia, I don't know if you have any other.
Just take a look at the article that I wrote as well. So I have a very long article about what people can do if they know that their work permits are starting to expire or a co-op work permit is expiring, and what are the possible programs they might be eligible for. So that's on our blog as well. And you can hopefully get a few broad categories to look at, things that people, your clients can do to try to examine to see, could I be eligible for any of these other categories or programs? So I wrote it a little while ago,
Yeah, I'm
and
scrolling back here a ways. We're working
here
on
we
it.
go.
This
It's there,
one.
it's right there. Yeah. How long can I stay in Canada after my work permit expires? And this gives, it's a pretty long article, so it gives a pretty big overview of the options.
So check that one out.
Mhm.
All right. Next on our list. This is okay. Thesura's got a question here for us. So Thesura says, do you guys handle US visas by any chance? My US B1 visa is going to expire next year. I'm looking to renew it. Thesura, just send me an email, and I've got some good friends that handle that type of those types of applications that can help you for sure. So we answer all questions here. And if Alicia or I we don't handle something ourselves, and even for the individual who asked the questions about a family lawyer to do a divorce, I didn't see in what part of Alberta you lived. But if you want to send an email as well, you can do that, and we can for sure refer you to a family lawyer here in Alberta. We've got lots of connections with friends all across the province of Alberta, and we'd be happy to share the contact of a family lawyer with you. Okay, so same thing for you, Thesura. Okay, Nami says, does the new news about online study mean that those who have a letter of offer or letter of admission can start online while waiting for the visa and come to Canada after that? Sorry, off-topic question, but would appreciate your response. Thanks.
Yeah, and there's another question I saw earlier too by Manvinderj at Canada that was asking about the online studies and what was happening with that. And so when Mark was away, Cedric and I managed to put together a live Q&A, and this is where well, actually it was like a news update, but this
Yeah.
is where we went through those new announcements to online studies and how it's affecting people who are here on study permit status. Be really careful because it does depend on the period of studies. So when your studies were occurring, and it only is going to give you the ability to claim that up until the end of this month, until August of 2022. And so it really does depend what time period we're looking at, but it doesn't apply to new programs after August 2022. So the same rules apply going forward in time. So be very careful that it's meant to try to help people who were in really difficult situations because of COVID, because of schools shutting down and things like that. But it ends as of the end of August 2022.
And there was another question about this, and I think we probably should do a video on this. So we haven't discussed the recent announcement that was just made literally today, extending essentially the policy to 2023 on for international students. So we're not going to deal with that today, Nisha, but just stay tuned, and we'll definitely do a little video just to kind of clarify, because there's a lot of uncertainty about studying before you come. And I'll be honest, I don't know what your position is, Alicia, but I always tell people, look, there's so many things that can go wrong, and you're paying money to study online, which is not the same kind of education that you're getting if you're in Canada. And I know there's a lot of education agents out there that are pushing you to do whatever it takes, but we've seen people who've paid for a full year, attended a full year, and get their study permit refused for various reasons, and then they're hooped, and the school goes back to in-person classes. And so I really don't like studying online, whether you're in Canada or outside Canada, at least in this current world. But I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Alicia.
Yeah, it's really risky if your study permit has not been approved and issued to do any sort of online studying, right? Because it's possible that that study permit can get refused. And there's been a fairly high rate of refusals on study permits, and you just don't know if something went wrong on the study permit application, or even if the officer disregarded a piece of your evidence. So be careful about that for sure. Even if your study permit was approved on paper, then you still have that risk of, is this going to be studies that is going to constitute Canadian studies such that you can claim express entry points for it? Or is it going to be studies such that you can be eligible for your postgrad work permit for that period of time as well?
Okay, here we'll shift back to one that, boy, we answer this one more than any. My CRS, Nurali says, is 489. Can I expect an invitation before the end of the year?
So, yeah, we have to gaze into a crystal ball here and see what's going on. But the best data is to look at the pool of applicants. And so go check what's going on with the express entry rounds of invitations, see how many people are sitting in the pool and how many people are being drawn in each invitation to apply. And of course, that number's been going up. We had another draw. The most recent one was August 17th, of course. And, instead of 1,500, it's up to like 2,250, which is a little bit better, but still not a huge draw compared to historically how they have been. And the CRS score of who's jumping into the pool is always a little bit of a wild card. So 489, we're probably looking at over 500 for quite some time. Will that come down to below 500 before the end of the year? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I strongly, strongly doubt it. When you look overall at the totals and you see how, how many people are 500 and above, like we have almost 9,000 still. And so to then drop down and you can see there's another 5,000 still above at 491 or above. So there's, excuse me, there's a lot of candidates that are still in the pool. So I think at this stage, we don't know what's going to happen with the minister. We don't know what's going to happen in September, but yeah, you definitely, anything is possible, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is an interesting question. So Yug says, hey, Mark and Alicia, who all can do that express entry course that you showed earlier in this live chat? Can anyone from India do that course? Oh my goodness, I'm terrible. Like maybe I'm just not very good at explaining. This whole course, you guys, was originally created to a large extent. It was Indian nationals. That's who I was targeting. People that were going through the express entry process, who traditionally weren't hiring Canadian law firms to help them all the way across the ocean, who were trusting local illegal agents to file their applications, screwing it up, and then destroying their lives. And so I created this express entry course originally as just a standalone course that you could access, which, yes, it is. It's full of over 10 hours of content, 642 minutes of premium videos. But then to just add more value, I do 4 now 1 hour live master classes. And so you can subscribe right now and get access to the material. And then come September 19th to the 22nd, that's where I do the master class. And so anyone who subscribes and benefits from the courses, they can come in and I do it over right over through YouTube. It's a private YouTube video just like this. And people really just become just like a family. And we, I go through each module, but I'm available to answer any questions that people have. So absolutely 100%. It was really designed for you as much as anyone, Yug. And then the people in Canada would just retain us usually anyways. And so, yeah, it was designed for you, and it's way cheaper than hiring even an agent in India. And you're getting, you're getting me really, and all of the resources that are available over the last 7, almost 8 years of managing express entry. So, all right.
And I'll just add quickly to that too,
Yeah.
Mark. We talk a lot about study permits and the fact that everybody who's outside Canada needs to get a study permit. This is not a study permit thing. Like, we are talking about something completely separate. If you're going to a Canadian designated learning institution and the list is all on the IRCC website, then you need a study permit. If you are not at a Canadian designated learning institution, then it's not possible to get a study permit. And the course that we have here is not an education course through, a school. It is us basically teaching you how to file and what are the important things about express entry that you need to know as somebody applying for express entry. So it's basically us as lawyers trying to help people who, local people may be taking advantage of and charging huge fees to for services that you're not in control of. And so this is teaching you how to do it yourself properly the first time.
Now, Alicia, our time is up right now. I have a consult that starts right at noon, which is in a minute. So we'll end it there. Amos asked the question, how do I do express entry? Amos, I recommend you just subscribe to the course and join me. And I know we've got a lot of questions about it. All of it's on the site. If you click on the link, Yug says, okay, I'm in. What will be the charges for the course? All of that is contained on there. So click on the link and you get access to all the material right now. And then I'll see you just in a couple weeks, Yug. And I look forward to joining us. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there, Alicia. And thank you so much for great answers to all the questions. I really appreciate your willingness to do this. And really, guys, we've got paying clients every day that will keep us more than busy. But there's just so much misinformation out there. We do our very best to try to help people to avoid all of those most common problems. And, today we had our little feature question here on, do I need to claim all the work experience? In the YouTube, you will have seen, at least those of you who are watching the actual video that we're doing right now, one of the things I neglected to say is that we also have been running a little bit of a poll in the background. And so what topic, and you can see here, if I open this up, are you most interested in for the next live Q&A featured question? So we have featured questions, and I think Igor has talked a little bit about that. There's a link in the description as well, where you can submit your specific question, and then we choose within the topics. And it still seems, Alicia, like the vast majority of people are really, really curious about express entry. So we'll probably pull the question up for Alicia's next live and focus it on express entry. But as you can see today, we still cover everything. But for those other channels that we are releasing these videos on, we cut off the little first portion where we answer the feature question, and then we post that on LinkedIn and post it on our Facebook page and Twitter, etc. So yeah. All right. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. And we will see you again. Well, I'll be back on Wednesday of next week, and Alicia on Thursday, and Cedric, don't forget him on Tuesday. So we've got a lot of options for you guys. All right. Take care. See you later.